In today's tutorial, we're going to be making some freaky mad science with this Tesla coil effect using Xparticles and also the built-in tools of Cinema 4D. Alright, let's get started. Hey, my name is Miranda. In today's tutorial, we're going to be making that Tesla coil effect from this animation that I worked on a couple of weeks ago. So if you can't tell, I'm kind of in a big mad science mood lately. I even kind of decorated my room to kind of have the green and purple sort of look. Big fan of Frankenstein. If you can't tell, this poster behind me is actually The Bride of Frankenstein. I had it framed. I also have like those little funny LEDs around it, and also the book. I not only have the book from Miranda, but I also have the manga version of it, which was actually done by my favorite manga artist, Junji Ito. And yeah, it's really good. And the thing that I like about Bride of Frankenstein and the book is that they kind of have a little bit more similar story than the original movie. The movie, has like the creation parts and him like escaping and people kind of getting mad at him. But the book has this really important like subplot where the monster demands a mate, and so they took that idea and made Bride of Frankenstein, which I thought was pretty cool. So anyways, side tangent over. So yeah, we're just going to look at how to make this effect. It's actually extremely easy. It's a little too simple maybe, so I'm going to show you how to do it with Xparticles and also how to do it with a cloner. Because yeah, it's like once you have the technique down, it's very flexible. It can actually be updated procedurally and whatnot. Okay, so anyways, let's go ahead and get started. Before we get started, it would mean a lot to me if you followed me on social media. It's at LuisMiranda4D on every platform. Make me look cool by helping me get to 10K on all platforms. Okay, so small Luis here. So here you can actually see the finished product. This is actually using a cloner and a little bit of a tracer. So you can see it kind of doing its little effect. It's kind of tracing these 2 points and it's creating the little wave effect. So let's go ahead and start from the very beginning. So I can show you both techniques. So the Xparticle way is pretty simple. All you have to do is create a spline. So go over here to your little spline pen and go ahead and draw a little spline. Make sure you select both points, right click, and then go to hard interpolation, and then also use your scaling tool and just use the X or the Z, whichever you have, and bring it all the way down to 0. And then this will make it perfectly straight. And now what we want to do is move this guy over, and while holding down control, you can drag and it'll create a copy, but it'll keep it all within one spline. So we got that guy going. Let's go ahead and select and kind of bring it a little closer together. And so yeah, so imagine this is your Tesla tubes and the electricity is kind of going to be connecting back and forth. All right, so let's go ahead and create ourselves an Xparticle system. And the first few things you want to do right away is here in your emitter, you want to change this guy to from rectangle over here to object. And then in object, you want to drop in the spline that you just drew, which is in your object. And then you're going to want to do edges. And then, but if you notice, I'm just going to press play. See how it's kind of like creating a bunch all over the spline. Even if you reduce the amount of particles being made, so let's go ahead and put 10 right here, you'll notice that they're kind of being generated all over the spline, and we just want it to be appearing on this bottom point going upwards. So a couple of reasons why all of this thing is doing what it's doing. So here, if you go into your spline and check your points by going into point mode, you'll notice that the spline actually has a white point and then it goes down to blue. The white point is actually tells Cinema 4D that that's the beginning of that spline. So right now, what Xparticles is doing is looking at the beginning of the spline, which is the top points, and having it shoot from its like normal, which is causing it to go down. So what you want to do is go ahead and select all of these points, right click, and then go here to point order, and then you go to reverse sequence, and then now when you press play, it shoots them upwards. But now we have to make one more modification to make sure that it's being emitted from the bottom point. And so it's over here in your XP emitter and down here in object. So here in emission point, you have it at random. So what you want to do is hit set. And basically that does everything we want it to do, because the default is to put it at 0, which is the first point. So it kind of does that for us, which is great. Cool. So now it's shooting 10 particles a second, which is not what we want to do. We actually want to have this guy go from, it's over here. Instead of doing a rate, we want to do a pulse. And so the pulse, what it does is that it shoots like one shot every however many frames that you tell it. Cool. So what we want to do is make sure that we want to make sure that these guys die up top here. Because something that's going to happen is that when you have all of these particles going on at once, they're going to start creating all these weird crisscrosses. So let me show you what I mean. Let's go ahead and restart and go here to generator, and then go down to XP trail and make sure you drop in your emitter as the emitter. And so when you press play, it just kind of creates your typical trace. So what you want to do is go here to algorithm, and from algorithm you want to go here to all points to all points. And so what it'll do, it'll actually connect them horizontally. And so yeah, you can see that it starts creating all these weird like pentagram shapes if you let it keep going. So we're going to want to make sure that when one set of particles goes, they're clear from the scene before the next ones appear. So if I had like a tube right here, sorry, like a torus, let's say that's the top of the Tesla coil. And so you want it to shoot when it hits it. So you just basically want to look at how long it takes for your particles to get there. So let's do full lifespan. Let's go ahead and start from the beginning. And by the time it hits the top, it's like 56. So just make sure you put here 56. And then over here, you want to put in 56. So they'll die when they reach, and then the next ones will appear as soon as those ones disappear. You can also add a gap. So if you want to do like 65, they'll go up and then they'll die, and then it'll be like a little bit of a gap. And then that's how you can ensure that they're not appearing at the same time. Cool. So now what we want to do is give this spline a little bit more movement, because right now they're just straight lines. So we're going to use a familiar little tool called Displacer, which if you followed my Nike Magenta, whatever it's called, tutorial, we make use of this guy and splines. So go down here to your Displacer, put it onto the XP trail. And then inside of the Displacer, what you want to do is go down here to shader and drop it into noise. And then you'll see that there's kind of like some movement happening, but it's going front to back. And also there's like no detail. And that's because of two reasons. The Displacer is currently not set correctly. And also the trail itself does not have any intermediate points. So what you want to do is go over here to spline, and then here go to uniform. And here you can actually see that it's starting to affect it. And so you can increase it to give it a little bit more resolution. And so as it goes through, it creates like this weird effect. But we still need to fix the direction of it, because front to back is not correct. So here in the Displacer, what you want to do is go here to object. And instead of vertex normal, you want to go to planar. And so here it gives you a similar situation because it's making you go left and right. So there's not really much change happening. So what you want to do is make it plus Y. And so now it'll start to affect it in a vertical manner. And it'll start creating a little bit more electric effect. So if you go over here to shading, you can actually play around with a lot of these settings. So here, if you pause it, and then here in your noise, do like blister turbulence, you can play around with it, and it all updates in real time, which is amazing. So you can really fine tune the look of your electricity. Another thing to keep in mind is that see how it by default it's kind of like dancing around, and it's going really fast. I personally don't like how fast it's going. So one thing I'm going to do is go over here into your shading options, and instead of doing texture here in space, what you want to do is change it over to UV, and this will basically freeze it. And so if you want to give it a little bit more motion and control how it looks, you can go here into your animation speed and crank it up, and then you can see that they're now moving, and they're moving at the speed that you determine. So if you want it to be really fast, you can make it really fast, or if you want it to be a little slower, a little bit more, I don't know, like menacing, I guess. Yeah, all you have to do is adjust the animation speed. Yeah, so that's basically more or less how you do it in here inside of Xparticles. You can obviously keep playing around with this and add different noises. So that's how we did it in Xparticles. I'll show you how to do it inside of just the Cinema 4D tools. And in some ways it's better, and it's also a little bit easier to follow along, but it doesn't have quite the customization of, you know, Xparticles, because obviously with Xparticles you can actually throw in like all these different effectors. So yeah, let's go ahead and try that guy out. So what I'm gonna do is actually get rid of this XP system. I'm just gonna deactivate it, make sure everything is off. I'm gonna drop it into one of my folders and hide that folder. So yeah, we don't have to deal with that guy anymore. But what we want to do is still keep that spline from before, so these 2 points. Cool, so go ahead and create yourself a cloner. So if you hit Shift-C, it'll bring up your commander. You can drop in your cloner, and I would recommend just grabbing something that has very few faces as possible. So a cube only has 6. Go ahead and drop that into your cloner, and then your cloner, make sure you set that to object. And then inside the object, you want to drop in your spline as the object. Cool. So it puts in all these boxes along the spline. What you want to do is basically just bring it down to 1. And so now it basically puts it at the bottom. And so you want it to move upwards. And so pretty simple. All you have to do is actually play around with this rate. And so now when you press play, it'll actually start moving. And as soon as it reaches the end of the spline, it'll immediately start over. Cool. So what you want to do now after that is go ahead and create this thing called a tracer. So since I already had the cloner selected, it already went ahead and created a trace link for us. But yeah, if you don't see your cloner in here, just go ahead and drop it in. Okay, so right away, you know, it'll do the same thing that we're kind of used to seeing, and that's it, you know, just tracing the path. What you want to do here is actually go from trace paths to connect all objects, which is very similar to the all points to all points algorithm. And so yeah, now it creates this little bridge between the 2 points. And so same thing as before, we want to make sure that we increase the subdivisions. So we'll just create like 40 something. Let's go ahead and create ourselves another displacer. And then on displacer, you drop it onto the tracer itself. Let's go ahead and create a new noise. And over here in object, let's go ahead and make sure we set this to +Y on the planar. And then there you go. It has a very similar effect. But the thing that I do like about this version compared to the Xparticles one is that you can actually mess around with like where these objects are going. So you can have them divert and it becomes a longer like electric current. You can do that with Xparticles, but you have to like stick it to the trail and then have it follow, but then you also have to play around with the lifespan. So in some ways this is probably just like a much easier way to customize it. I would also make sure you hide the cloner. So now you can see that the electricity is going between the 2. Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and just do like a quick sweep on this guy. And let's go ahead and bring in a little circle. Let's make it a little bit smaller. And let's go ahead and drop in our like main spline and then also our circle. And then here you can see that it's creating like tubes. And so you can make those glass and then have like the electricity kind of going between them, or you can make it metal. You can do all sorts of things. And so if you want to visualize this spline in like a render engine, it's pretty simple. So I'm going to use Redshift, but it works very similar in Octane. You can kind of see me playing around and kind of creating that effect. So let's go ahead and start over. Okay, cool. So if we zoom out on our Redshift viewer, you can see the two pillars. And all you really have to do is here on your tracer, bring up your commander and type in redshift, and it'll give you the option for redshift object. And so here you can drop in like a hair strand, or you can do cylinders, but I think hair strands is easier to render. And so you can see it right away. It appears inside of the viewer. And so if you want to do like a material and then drop it onto the tracer, and then here in overall, make sure you increase the emission weight and then bring up, you know, give it like a color or something like that. And then press play. And then now it's glowing. And so yeah, you can pretty much just keep playing around with the displacer, find the settings that you really like. You can make it bigger, smaller, whatever. And then it'll just immediately update. And it'll just follow the animation path that you gave it, which is just upwards. Yeah, so that's pretty much like the technique on how to make it. Alright, so that basically wraps up the tutorial. Like I told you, it was pretty simple. But yeah, it gives you a really cool effect. So something that I would recommend when you're like shading it and stuff, if you decide to make like a little Tesla coil effect, is look up images of actual Tesla coils and use like the bright, the center of the Tesla coil, like electricity, and then also the fringes. It'll give you this nice little purple gradient, and it kind of gives it a little bit more authenticity. So I hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. Hopefully I'll see you guys much sooner rather than later. Okay, well, I'll catch you on the next one.